Welcome back everyone, this is Mindy, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to use stencils with glitter gel. This will create some really fun and beautiful backgrounds. I'll start by walking you through the supplies I'll be using. First, the stamp set Love Letters, and I'll also be using Llama Tell You. Then for dies, I'm going to use the stitched scalloped rectangle frames, small stitched rectangle stackables, everyday sentiment banners, and for inks, I have the clear embossing ink, jet black ink, wild rose, ballet slippers, and also peacock ink, all from Lawn Fawn. I'm going to be using the Conversation Heart Stencil, which is a two-piece stencil set, and cardstock is Mermaid, ballet slippers, chili pepper, white cardstock, and black licorice. Now for additional supplies, I have red velvet and gold glitz glitter gel. I'll also be using some white embossing powder, the Lawn Fawn liquid glue, a clear acrylic block, my spatula for the glitz glitter gel, the tweezers, an embossing powder or the anti-static powder, and I also have a scoreboard and my bone folder to create a card base, my stamp chamois and foam tape, and also some blending tools. Now for coloring, I will be using my Copic markers, and I will have all of the colors listed at the top of the screen for you during that time. I'm going to start you off first with creating the backgrounds. So I'm taking my white cardstock, I'm laying that on the back side of the heart stencil, and this is the solid hearts, and I'm just holding that in place with some low tack tape. Now I'll be ink blending on some ballet slippers Lawn Fawn ink using a blending tool and a sponge. And I'm just going to pick up that ink by rubbing that sponge lightly onto the ink pad. I like to kind of dab off so I don't come in too hard with my ink. And then starting off of my cardstock, I'm going to blend on. So I like to kind of start off and then work my way onto the cardstock. That way I don't have any harsh lines or harsh edges. And I am doing this pretty light-handed. I'm not pushing down really hard. For one, I want to make sure I have even coverage. I don't want to come in too strong. And two, I don't want my foam to catch on that little point of the heart there. If it catches on your foam, you could shift your stencil or rip your foam tool. So I'm just doing this really light-handed. If I want that to be a darker color, I can always come back in and apply more ink. And just by taping that cardstock to the back of the stencil, I'm able to move this around really easy. And I do like to work either on a silicone mat or a glass surface to do my ink blending. Once this panel is done, I'll just carefully remove that stencil. Comes up really nice, and I have a really adorable background here. So that's good as is, but I'm going to add a little bit to it to give it some sparkle. Now I'm going to work on one more quick background because these are really easy to make. So once again, I'm holding my cardstock to the back of the stencil with some low tack tape. And this time I am using ballet slippers cardstock, and these were both cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm going to apply Wild Rose. So it's almost like a tone-on-tone look, but it's just a little bit darker to make it stand out a little bit. And Wild Rose is really a gorgeous color that I need to reach for more often because this was really pretty. When I am done ink blending, I will just take the stencil over to the sink and just rinse this off with some warm water. Then I can carefully peel that up, and I have 2 backgrounds ready to go. So now to step this background up a little bit, I am taking that second piece of the stencil which has the words on it, and I'm just eyeballing it. It's really easy to see through the stencil to the cardstock, even the white cardstock, and so I'm matching up those words with the hearts, and then once again just holding that in place. Now I'm going to take red glitz glitter gel. This is actually red velvet. And I'm going to take a spatula and just apply this over the entire top of the stencil. You can see I'm just grabbing a big chunk out of the jar and spreading that across the words. I'll do that through the entire panel. And as you'll see here in just a moment, you're going to have, some big areas where there's a lot of that glitz glitter gel there. And what I like to do is I will hold my spatula straight up and down, and that will give me a really good just fine line to scrape off any of that excess gel. Now, really, when it comes to doing this part of the stencil, the possibilities are endless. You could ink it up with a darker color of ink. You could use any type of texture paste or any other type of paste or gel. Whatever you happen to have on hand will work wonderful. One thing I do want to point out is that when you're using anything like a glitz glitter gel like this, you want to make sure to clean up your mess fairly quickly. So I like to wipe my surface up with a baby wipe, make sure all of that is picked up. I take my spatula and my stencil over to the sink, and I kind of just put it with some soap and warm water and rub my hand over it to get all of that glitter off of my stencil. If you don't have access to a sink right away, you could always have a little tub of warm water and maybe some dish soap. We have Dawn dish soap that I use, and you could throw your stencil in there just so that's soaking and getting off of your stencil, because once it dries on there, it's pretty tough to come off. So I'm able to get my stencils super clean just by using that dish soap and warm water. Now this background I did with the gold glitz glitter gel, and once it's done, I'm going to remove the stencil and I'm going to set these off on the side to dry for a little bit and work on the rest of my card. Now, since my background was quite busy and I want that to be the focal piece of my card, I'm going to use just a small image, and I'm using the Llama Tell You image. I'm just going to line this up and stamp it onto the white cardstock from Lawn Fawn, which is great for Copic coloring, stamping that into the jet black ink. Sometimes what I'll do, especially if I double stamp an image, is just take my heat gun and kind of wave it over that to dry the ink. That way nothing will smear when I come into Copic color. Now I will have all of the colors listed at the top of the screen for you. This is going to be really quick and easy to color in, which is one of the reasons why I chose this image. A lot of it is going to be white, or I'm going to leave it a lot of it white, and that way it's not blending into my background. That was one thing I had a problem with when I was having these backgrounds with so much going on in it, is I had a hard time picking an image that's not going to fight with the background, so to speak, as far as design and everything going on. So with the llama, this worked really well because there's not a lot to it. It's very cute, simple, clean, and I can leave a lot of it white, which will match any of the backgrounds that I create. So I'm just coming in with some colors. I had used BG23 and R22 and R20 on that blanket. For the face of the llama, I'm using E55, 53, and 51. I added the darkest shading right where the fur is meeting the face. That's where I feel a shadow would be. And I left a lot of this in real-time coloring. So that's actually the speed that I color in. Now for the fur, I'm just going to add some dots. I'm not coloring in the whole thing. I'm not adding the dots all over. I'm taking my darkest color, which for this one is W3, and I'm adding the dots just in a few spots where a shadow might be. So maybe the top of the head or the back side of the neck, and then under the chin, around the blanket, just a few little dots. I hold my pen up and down, straight up and down. Now this part of the video I did speed up just a little bit. So I hold my Copic marker straight up and down to get the very fine tip of that marker. And I came in with W2 and W0. And I decided I wanted just a little bit more definition, so I brought in W5. Then I can take the coordinating die, line it up over the image, hold it in place with Post-it tape, and run that through my die cut machine. Now for a sentiment, I decided to go with this really cute saying. This is from the Love Letter stamp set. One of the reasons I went with this is I was kind of digging through stamp sets that I had and I hadn't used before, and Love Letters was one of them that I had purchased and hadn't used yet. And it has some really cute images. I like the font on it. This was a perfect, simple sentiment strip to add to the front of the card. So I lined that up with my Misty, prepped the black licorice cardstock with an anti-static powder tool. That's going to help so that my embossing powder only sticks to where my ink is and not all over the place, especially where I live in the wintertime. Static is a nightmare. So I stamped that in embossing ink, And then I'm sprinkling on the Lawn Fawn white embossing powder and tapping off any of the excess. And off on the side, I have my heat gun warming up so I can bring it to my cardstock really nice and hot. It melts that embossing powder really quick, and it also kind of minimizes warping. Now, I want to show you a trick that I do for my sentiments. This is a skinny one out of the Everyday Sentiments banner die. So I ran that through my die cut machine once. I took that out and I'm lining that back up over my sentiment, just focusing on that one end. This is going to be able to customize the length of my sentiment strip. So I just kind of wanted to show that to you. After my panel is dry, I'm going to line up one of the dies from the small stitched rectangle stackables. I'll hold that in place and run that through the die cut machine. So before I do anything else, I wanted to create a card base. So I have a piece of white cardstock here cut to 4 1/4 by 11. And using my bone folder, I'm scoring at 5 1/2. Notice I do have my cardstock kind of brought down a little bit, and that just helps so I get a really nice, good score on it. And then I can fold these half and reinforce that score line with my bone folder. Now I can work on the actual assembly of the card. So I did both of my cards the same, so I'll just show one on screen. I have a frame here. This is using the stitched scalloped rectangle frame, die cut from the Mermaid cardstock, and I'm using the liquid glue to attach this to the front of my A2 size card base. And I always love to use my tweezers. It kind of keeps my fingers out of the way and helps me line that up better. So once I'm happy with the position, I'll just push down to make sure that's secure. And then to attach my panel, I did take foam tape and line the back of my panel with that. And I'll line this up, and it's going to just slightly cover up that stitched edge from the inside, but I like the dimension that this gives. I also added foam squares to my llama to pop that up just a little bit. And I'm going to put that right down in the corner, and I'm leaving the background as a huge focal point of my card. Then I'm going to add in my little sentiment strip that I have here, and it's going to be able to tuck right under my llama. I knew when placing my foam squares, I kind of left some space there so I could tuck this in. And I'm just adding that with the Lawn Fawn liquid glue. So see here, I'll just tuck that right under the llama. And once I feel that that's straight, I can push down, and I like to hold mine for about 30 seconds to a minute or so just to make sure that's adhered down really well. And then we can work on the second card. Now for the second one, because I had used a colored panel, I wanted to kind of add some separation between the colors there. My scalloped frame is die cut from the chili pepper, so I hand cut a white panel myself, and I made it just about 1/8 of an inch bigger than this die cut panel that I have my glitz glitter gel on. Now you want to make sure that that glitter gel is really dry before you die cut it. I did have a little bit left over on my die, and I just took a baby wipe and was able to wipe that off of my die. So I just want to make sure you're aware to make sure that that's really dry before you do any die cutting. So once again, I just added foam tape to my llama, and I'll be tucking the sentiment right under the llama there, and then we'll work on stamping on the inside of the cards. And I know this is something I see asked for a lot, what I put on the inside of my cards, and I typically don't. I usually kind of leave that open for whatever message I want to put, but since there's not a lot on the front, I thought I would add one of these cute sentiments from that love letter stamp set. It has some really great fonts on there, so I thought that was just a really nice change up. I opened up my card base. I'm holding it down with the magnet in the Misty tool, and I'm inking this sentiment up with peacock ink. Now, since I have this already in my Misty, I'm going to go ahead and just switch out my card bases and stamp the same thing in this second card. Now, there are also a couple hearts that are on that love letter stamp set that I thought would be really cute. So since I already had my Misty out, I'm just lining this up onto my cardstock, and I'll use my Misty to stamp it. You could certainly use an acrylic block, but since I had the Misty out, I thought I would just go ahead and use that. And I'm stamping the hearts in the Wild Rose ink. Now, I like to work in threes, so I did take one of the hearts and add it to a small acrylic block, and I'm going to hand stamp a third heart just to kind of make it a little trio. And that will finish off me decorating the inside of the card. So I hope you enjoyed the video and just taking a look at how to use any type of glitter gel or any type of paste you would want to use with the stencil. I had a lot of fun creating these and I love the addition of the cute little llama. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you again next time.